Welcome back, in-game community. I'm Pierre, he's Chris, and we're going to give you our top boom picks of the week for week 13 of the fantasy season. So let's start it off. Chris, who do you like in week 13?
I love Michael Pittman this week. I know he didn't quite go off last week. He's had a couple of down games. He's poised to have a boom week. He did get 10 targets in that game last week. If he gets 10 targets this week, he's going to have a monster game, perhaps one of his best fantasy games of the year. Houston defense, they can't stop anybody in the passing game. So love Pittman this week. Think he's going to see a ton of targets. Definitely always a chance to score, always a chance for a big play. I think he'll boom in week 13.
Agree with you. Love Pittman rest of the season. Now, you might have heard a little something about Dalvin Cook getting injured. I'm just going to go out and say I'm starting Madison, and he's going to boom because guess what? He gets to play the Detroit Lions. Even if Cook somehow plays, it's not like he's going to be a full go. You know that Madison's going to be involved, and he doesn't even need to get 20 plus touches. It's the Lions. Second worst run defense, only because the Jets exist. In the two starts that Madison had, he went over 112 rushing yards both times. He doesn't need to get a ton of carries. Like I said, this is the Lions. He'll be involved. They're going to protect Cook. If Cook doesn't play, it's a no-brainer that Madison is a starting running back on your team, but I think he's going to have a huge week, so absolutely keep him in your lineup, even if you hear good news about Cook. All right, who else do you like, Chris?
I'm going with another guy who's kind of been disappointing recently, and that's Darrell Henderson, because he's also in a get-right spot this week against Jacksonville. You talked about the Jets, you talked about the Lions. Well, the Jacksonville Jaguars are right there with them in terms of defense. Now, granted, they don't give up a ton of fantasy points to running backs, but that's because teams are able to throw on them so much. But in this game, you got to think the Rams are going to be up big. There's going to be a lot of Darrell Henderson down the stretch, running out the clock. A lot of touchdown opportunities. He's catching the passes. I think this is a get-right spot for the entire Rams offense, including Darrell Henderson. I think he's going to have a big game this week, and remind everybody why he's kind of a borderline must-start every week anyways, but definitely a boom in week 13.
So I'm going to go to a quarterback who basically is like a running back, and that's Taysom Hill. You haven't heard his name for a minute because he hasn't been playing, had a concussion that kept him out a couple weeks. Then we heard that there was a foot injury, but now lo and behold, he's taking first team reps at quarterback, which is not a surprise if you've seen Trevor Siemian play the last couple weeks. So after getting embarrassed on Thanksgiving Day, that was enough. Taysom Hill's back at quarterback, and we know what he can bring to the table. If you played him last year when he was at quarterback, you were kind of rooting for Drew Brees to stay injured because Taysom Hill was absolutely crushing it from a fantasy standpoint. Unfortunately, you can't slot him in at tight end anymore. That little cheat code doesn't exist, but you can definitely roll him out at quarterback because we know what he can do. He's going to be the main back by the goal line. He's the guy who's going to run it in himself, and he's a pretty decent passer. So Taysom Hill, I feel like he's a guy you can roll out if you're streaming quarterback, if you have somebody who's on a bye. I really like him to boom in this matchup against Dallas, which is a bottom 10 defense against quarterbacks. All right, let's keep it rolling. Chris, give me another boom.
Yeah, it was a disappointing Sunday night game for the entire Ravens offense, including Marquise Brown. But I think he bounces back big time in week 13 against the Steelers. They got TJ Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick back last week, and it didn't matter. They were still awful on defense, and now TJ Watt has just landed on the COVID reserve list, so a good chance he doesn't play against the Steelers defense that's absolutely been reeling the last few weeks, unable to stop people, unable to tackle. You got to think Lamar Jackson, he's not going to throw 4 interceptions again. He's going to bounce back, and when he does, the biggest benefactor is going to be Marquise Brown. We know what he's capable of. He's capable of those huge 2-touchdown monster performances. I think week 13 is one of those. He'll boom for your fantasy team.
Now, I'll go with the unlikely candidate here. I did mention how bad the Jets' run defense is. They are the worst, and so why not play a running back against them? I like Boston Scott in week 13. Look, Miles Sanders would be the obvious choice. He's got a sore ankle, and even so, we saw that Boston Scott was getting more touches than Sanders in week 12. And guess who gets the work around the goal line besides Jalen Hurts? Boston Scott is the one who's going to get more chance to score touchdowns. I think that he's a solid play against this Jets defense because he's the guy who I feel is going to get the most opportunity. Jordan Howard probably still out. Jalen Hurts himself is also banged up, so even if he plays, maybe not going to be running quite as much. So I think that you can take a chance on Scott and roll him out as a flex play. All right, give me one more boom.
I'm going to say Kirk Cousins will boom. He definitely did not boom in week 12. And he's had some boom games and he's had some disappointing games this year. But if he can't boom against Detroit, I don't know what's going on. This team is terrible. I mean, Andy Dalton just threw for over 300 yards against the Lions. Now, granted, he only had one touchdown, but that's because he's Andy Dalton and he plays for the Bears. Kirk Cousins has Justin Jefferson. Kirk Cousins has Adam Thielen. He might not have a Dalvin Cook, but it's okay because he's got Alexander Madison. He has enough weapons around him. Got to go for at least 300 yards in this game. 2+ touchdowns. Kirk Cousins absolutely going to boom in week 13.
All right, so I'm going to pick another player from that game, but I'm going to take you a place that you didn't think I would take you, and I never thought I would go myself. Josh Reynolds. That's right, you may not even know that Josh Reynolds is on the Detroit Lions because he's only played 2 games for them, and now all of a sudden he's their top receiver because who else do they have? Their top 3 receivers from the preseason who are coming into week 1 as starting, they're all out or off the team. It's Josh Reynolds now all of a sudden, and guess what? He's got his old quarterback, Jared Goff from the days in the Rams, and he found him more than anybody else on Thanksgiving Day. He led the team with 70 yards and caught a touchdown. And going against Minnesota, you might not know this, but Minnesota actually gave up the most fantasy points to wide receivers. So this looks like a great spot for him. I think there's a good chance he booms again. So if you're feeling lucky, roll with Reynolds. All right, so in addition to these videos, guys, we have a whole lot of other ways to help you win at fantasy. Check out the description below for more information. All right, good luck.